Hi, guys. Welcome to this live astrology class. I'm your astrologer and instructor, Christian Klausner, and I'm so happy and honored to be here today to give you a rundown of some more principles, fundamentals of the zodiac. Today, we're going to cover the elements in a little bit more depth. We're also going to look at something very interesting that I want you to see. I think we've taken a look at this before, but I really want you to see this. So I'm going to show you this first before we actually get into the elements. So go ahead and pull out your astrological journal, and we are going to take some more very valuable notes for you to see how the planets overlay the signs. And so you can see a certain pattern here. So go ahead and pull out your journal and follow along. Okay, so if you would, in your journal, go ahead and draw a circle. Doesn't have to be perfect. Can look like lumpy, a lumpy ball of putty, and that's okay. So we're going to divide this circle by a vertical line, a horizontal line, giving us the cardinal cross. And then we're going to fill it in with the 12 slices of the pie, like we do. Just two more lines within each quarter will eventually give us 12. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do things a little differently because I want you to see this pattern in a certain way. So we're actually going to put the sun in here. So the sun is going to go here. We're going to put the moon here. So we're going to put the moon and the sun at the top of this chart for the king and queen to be at the top of this hierarchy. Okay. So this circle is actually if we had put Leo and Cancer here at the top. And so Leo and Cancer are both ruled by the sun and moon, but instead of working with the signs, we're just working with the planets here. And then on either side of the sun and moon is Mercury, messenger of the gods. Mercury is on the right and left hand sides of the king and queen. Next, we're going to have Venus on either side of Mercury. And then we're going to have Mars on either side of Venus. All right. And then next, we're going to have Jupiter. This is actually the order of the planets. We have the sun, then Mercury is next to the sun in the order of the solar system. After Mercury, it is Venus next. And then we have the Earth. But then on the other side of the Earth is Mars. And then after Mars, we have Jupiter. And after Jupiter, we do have Saturn. So we're going to do Saturn down here on twice. So we see that Saturn is in opposition to the sun and moon here at the bottom. Saturn being the lord of karma, the planet of limitation, and being the planet of limitation, it's the planet of form. All forms have a limit to them. That's what makes them an individualized form. What we discover in esoteric astrology is that Saturn is the builder of forms. Our moon is the molder of forms, but the Saturn is the one that builds the form of the individuality. It's thanks to the help of Saturn that we are actually able to be fully formed as individuals. So Saturn actually helps in this great work of the perfection of the human soul as a separate individual, a spark from God that's flown off of God and realized itself as one with God while still being separate. It's the amazing miracle that we have an opportunity for in this realm. So this order of the planets does follow along with the signs. Funny enough, this is where Leo would be. This is where Cancer would be. Right? Cancer is ruled by the moon. Leo is ruled by the sun. Next to Cancer would be Gemini, ruled by Mercury. And next to Leo would be Virgo, also ruled by Mercury. Then on either side of those signs are Venus ruled signs. There's Taurus. Over here would be Libra coming after Virgo. And then the Mars ruled signs, Aries comes before Taurus there, and Scorpio is after Libra. And then the Jupiter signs would be Sagittarius after Scorpio. And on this side, we've got what comes before Aries is Pisces, another Jupiter ruled sign. And then lastly, we have the two Saturn signs, which is Capricorn and Aquarius. So this is I wanted you to see it this way so you could see how it goes in the order, how there is a divine pattern. Now we normally start with Aries on the other side. Because when we had that cardinal cross, this vertical and the horizontal, the cardinal cross, which is the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, and undersky. Normally, this would be flipped. Aries would be over here in the normal case of the order of the signs. But this is one way where, if we just rotated the wheel, if we could literally take this and rotate it and put Aries over here, that would be the normal way. But we just simply rotated the wheel so that you could see it from this angle. This will help it stick in your brain even more to understand that there's a sign that is ruled by the sun, which is Leo, and a sign ruled by the moon, which is Cancer. And then on either side, then we have this pattern playing out, right? So it normally starts with Aries, then goes to Taurus, and then Gemini. We begin with this Martian sign. That's the first day of spring, Aries, and so on and so forth. But in this way, you can get an idea of what this represents. And what this is left brain and right brain, the logical left brain, the creative right brain. Is one way you could look at it. In yogic texts and the secrets of the yogis, they talk about the two channels of energy, which are the serpents that travel up the spine and interweave with each other like this. And these are the points of the chakras. This is where the chakras intersect. Here's a chakra, here's a chakra, here's a chakra for everybody. And then finally, you have the crown chakra at the top, of course. And so there's your crown. Oh, enlightened. So these two channels of energy are what form our perception of duality. They help keep the duality there, of course, in the perception of the mind. And one is called Ida and the other is called Pingala. And these are the two snakes. And so there's certain breathing techniques you can do by closing one nostril, breathing in the other nostril, breathing out that nostril, closing the other nostril. There's all kinds of techniques and stuff. Just breathing techniques that work with this, that work with channeling and cleaning out these two channels. So this is one way you could look at the chakra system. Is at the crown chakra, you have the crown is lit up once you have these two dual parts of yourself in harmony. Once you've been able to reconcile the opposites, and the fall of man in Genesis is about eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So returning back to wholeness, back into paradise and the kingdom of heaven within you is about reconciling these opposites. It's about forgiveness. It's about wholeness. It's about learning to reunite with the shadow you've projected out into the world, realizing all the evil you see in the world is in you. And when you do this, when you see that Satan and Christ alike are both within you, reconcile the opposites through divine love, you're able to put these two in harmony. And then from there, the energy is able to circulate and become whole. And so, we could say crown chakra, pineal gland, third eye, and then, down from there, the throat, then the heart, then the solar plex, then the sacral, and then Saturn would rule the root chakra. So these are different layers of energy. This is another look for you to see how the zodiac is a book of life. It's a container of the record of not only the psyche of humanity and in the entire circle of the psyche, everything that we carry in the archetypes of our unconscious, but also for you to see how it is a pattern of energy through which we are created after this pattern. So interesting thoughts there. Just I want another angle for you to see how the zodiac is really um, an amazing tool to understand what we are, who we are, what we're working with here. And through the rulerships of all the different body parts that these signs rule, the body is the psyche is the body. So by working with our body, um, understanding how the body is the mind, it reveals the mental attitudes through the posture of the body and the energy of the body. Whenever we have a certain disease in a certain part of the body or anything like that, we have to work with that part of the body and spiritually understand how to heal, not just on the physical level, but on all levels. We start to come into this holistic, that's really the best word I can think of, a holistic perception of life, understanding how everything is a whole here and it's all one and everything is connected. So I hope that was helpful. And so now let's get into this little presentation here that I have for you. I wanted to show you a few things here. We're going to talk about the elements behind astrology, which to me is really one of the most fun parts of astrology because it's where you can really truly understand different character types and the energy that comes forth from those character traits and types. So this is what we covered in the last class, the 12 needs of the 12 signs, the 12 psychological needs. Here I've color coded them for you to see the elements so that your eyes can kind of lock on to, for example, all the red ones, all the red signs. There's just 3 of them, but you can see these needs here and you can see how they're related in a strange way. So we're going to look at this rather in depth. Aries, the need to be independent, develop self-awareness, that spark of life. It's the spark of the desire to become alive, to be an individual, to be separate. Leo has the need to creatively express that self, to further extend that self into space creatively and to share the appreciation or the warmth of others. And then Sagittarius has a need to explore and expand the horizons of my mind and world. Again, it's about the extension of the self. So fire seems to have this very selfhood kind of a theme to it, but Sagittarius is more broad, it's more far reaching, it's more transpersonal and social. And so as the signs progress through the zodiac, they get more and more and more social in their consciousness. The first 4 signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, they're concerned with the personal self, and each of these signs have a self, of course. So there is a personal element to each and every sign, just as there is a social element to each and every sign because we all live together here on this wheel. But there are stages of development of consciousness, and there are degrees, or you could say a spectrum of different character types and how concerned they are with either building a self, building an individual identity, a self, or building a meaningful connection socially to others. And there can be varying differences depending on the need of the soul. And this is kind of what astrology helps to see, is what is the soul's underlying need or lesson that it's learning to develop here in this life. Some souls are developing by understanding how to be themselves and how to own their identity and how to reclaim their power and what is right for them. Other souls have mastered that lesson and they are learning now to get along in life with other souls. And of course, it's both. There's varying degrees for all of us, and it's on a spectrum. Some have a greater need to focus on themselves, others have a greater need to focus on others. And so the zodiac can kind of show that spectrum. So based on the element of the sign that you're born in, this reveals a lot about your character. It reveals a lot about the energy that you bring into the world. And it's important to understand that energy, because once you understand your element, you understand what you need psychologically, but also energetically. And just for an example, if you're a water sign, you have a certain sensitivity and emotional perceptiveness. So you will need to recharge, and you'll need to potentially create space from others, because water tends to soak up whatever goes into it. If you leave something in a glass of water, that water will eventually break it down, and it'll start to merge with whatever you place in that water. So water signs, it's very important that they understand what that means to be watery, right? Give me just a second here. I don't know why. Don't know what's taking this so long. All right, so the elements are some of the most exciting parts of astrology, if you ask me. This is where you really get a grasp or an understanding of what each sign is like and why it is like that. So, I want you to notice something, that in the spring signs, it starts with a fire sign. All right. It starts with fire, has earth in the middle, which is Taurus, and then air in the last phase of it. Then in summer, it starts with a water sign. There's a fire sign in the middle, holding it down, and then there is an earth sign ending it. So the sign that begins the season says something about the nature and the quality of that entire season. Fall begins with Libra, an air sign, is held down by a water sign, and ends with a fire sign. And what I really want you to pay attention to is the last three, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, in the winter. There is no fire sign here in the winter. So the winter is cold, not just naturally in nature, but it's cold in the energetic sense also, because there's no fire sign in that whole season. There's no upliftment. There's no encouraging. There's none of that inspiration of the spirit of the fire. And that's why these winter signs can tend to be pretty cold, not only because it's held down by Aquarius, which is the sign opposite the heart, opposite Leo. So it can be a pretty cold, detached, logical sign. But there's just no fire in winter. So this is something to pay attention to, when it comes to the elements, especially when we understand the elements in medieval alchemy and how it's connected to the thermal states being where is it? Yeah, two possible thermal states and two possible states of humidity. So the thermal is whether it's hot or cold. And then the states of humidity are whether it's warm or whether it's wet or dry. And these are qualities. These are the way that we register the impressions through our senses of how things feel. And so, of course, that's going to apply psychologically as well. And you've noticed this in your own life, a person's energy, where you're like, that person felt off, or that felt weird. You're feeling their vibes, right? This is where the value of astrology is, as yet, as far as I can see, pretty much untapped in its potential, and our ability to be able to feel energy, the energy of people. It's kind of cheesy because we talk about energy and we use the word energy when we don't fully understand something a lot of times, or it tends to sound pretty hippie-ish. But the fact of the matter is that there is energy in everything. Matter is energy. Everything is energy. And so our exchanges with other souls, it functions on this foundation of energy. And so what is the energy? Well, it works through nature as these four elements: fire, earth, air, water. And it's the scale from dry, cool, moist, and warm, right? So an earthy person is cold and dry, and that pretty much sums up the personality. It really doesn't need to get much more complicated than this. You know what these words mean, so you know what an earthy person is going to be like. It's even inherent in the word earthy, that they're very likely grounded. but you're probably not going to get a lot of warmth from an earthy person. You absolutely can, because the four elements exist in all signs and all people. Your body has the fire of life within it. It also has the water and the blood. It also has the earth and the minerals in the bones and in the skin. And of course, it also has the air, the oxygen. So we have the capacity for all these things, but the soul's urge is coming through one of these elements in particular. And that depends on the sun sign. Next, we want to look for the moon for the person's energy that they're going to be giving or sharing in interactions. And then we want to also look for the rising sign to understand the kind of energy that we're feeling from them. Those are going to be the main ones you're going to feel. You're also going to be feeling their Mars and Venus. And then pretty much is going to stop there. You will feel their Jupiter, you will feel their Saturn, but the first planets you're going to feel energetically in a person, in their personality, in their vibe, in the way they carry themselves, or the way they make you feel, it'll be in those first 4 to 5 planets: Sun, Moon, rising sign, Venus and Mars, and possibly Jupiter at times. The fifth element I postulate is the observer within you. We hear a lot about the ether with the fifth element. This is there's a lot of guesswork with this because the ether hasn't been scientifically measured in any way. It's still very largely in the theoretical stage, as far as I understand. But I think the fifth element is that it's that element which contains all the four. And what really contains all the four? Because the four are visible manifestations. We see the four elements in nature. We see it in us. It's things that we can see and measure and experience. But there is no experience without an experiencer. So it just seems logical to me that the fifth element is in fact this awareness behind the elements. It's the substrata from which they arise, which to me is consciousness. So I think the fifth element is you as the observer being aware of these four elements. Without that fifth, we have none of the four. Just like without awareness, we don't have anything to be aware of. So it's just kind of my theory there, my postulation. So let's get a little deeper into the four elements here. And I want you to understand how these are the four types, four functions of the ego to interpret reality. Okay. So these four types have been classified by Carl Jung in psychology. We have air, which is rational analysis, understanding and responding with the intellect, connecting ideas to come to a general understanding. The air signs are rather detached and unemotional. So if you have an air sign person in your life and you're wondering how can they be so cold or dry? Air signs do carry a lot of potential for wetness. And I think if we even look at this scale, air is warm and wet. So air and fire are very active. Fire and air, I want you to know, you can write this in your notes. Those are the active elements. They are yang or masculine or positive because fire and air act upon the environment. They also have passive states, but those are the most active of the elements. Just like earth and water they tend to be acted upon. So they are the passive or feminine elements, earth and water. And so an air person can carry a lot of moisture through the air, of course. They have a capacity to share ideas and thoughts, which is their primary mode of operation, is by communicating, sharing. They can communicate a lot of warmth and a lot of nurturance and stuff. But at the end of the day, you're always going to feel like they are sort of hovering, like they're not making full contact with you. To them, it feels like full contact because so much is theoretical and abstract in the life of an air sign. But air sign people, if you're wondering, why aren't they so close? Why don't they be closer to me? Why don't I feel like they care? They likely do care, but air signs have a way of kind of remaining separate from everything, almost like there's always going to be a little space between you and them. And air signs like it that way. They like a little space because they get to stretch out. They get to feel spacious. If that's their nature, that's what they want. That's how they operate. Being able to understand a person's element is going to go a long way in you being able to actually practice and show forth some real empathy. So a fire sign person functions on intuition. That's the intuition type. People who function on possibilities of what they can see. It's very visionary, and so you'll hear it through their language. Carl Jung even had an amazing quote on this. So I'm going to read a few passages here from this book, which is called The Portable Jung. It's edited by Joseph Campbell. It's a compilation of a lot of Jung's most essential writings. So it's a great book, highly recommend it. All right, the first thing I want to share is what he says. What he says here, which is about these four functions of consciousness. So this is in the introduction. Joseph says that Jung assigns the leading part in the differentiation of types to what he terms the four functions of consciousness. So again, Carl Jung's whole life's mission was to be able to chart the psyche for psychoanalytical purposes, for the purposes of helping his clients and really helping people to sort out their problems and live a more harmonious and happy life, to overcome the issues and the limitations that they've faced inside themselves, right? So his whole task was to study very dedicatedly to the structure of consciousness, to make a map out of it. This is what he found, that there are four functions, noticing that whereas one person may favor thought as a guide to judgment, another will follow feeling. And whereas one will tend to experience both the world and his friends through impressions made directly on his senses, another will be given rather to intuiting potentialities, hidden relationships, intentions, and possible outcomes. Sensation and intuition are the two functions, according to this view, by which facts and the fact world are apprehended. Feeling and thinking, those of judging and evaluating. So again, in case you missed it, sensation, which is earth, and intuition, which is fire, are the two functions by which facts and the fact world are apprehended. So it's about intuiting and feeling and understanding the facts and the fact world. And then feeling and thinking are those of judging and evaluating. How do I feel? How do those facts make me feel? What do I think about these facts? But as Jung observes and shows, and here's the crux of his argument, only one of these four functions takes the lead in the governance of a person's life, and it is seconded normally by only one, not both, from the other duad, as, for example, thinking supported by sensation, or sensation supported by thinking, both of which combinations, characteristic of modern Western man, leave feeling and intuition disregarded, undeveloped, or even repressed, and consequently in the unconscious, susceptible to activation and outburst as autonomous complexes, either in the way of demoniacal seizures or more mildly, uncontrollable moods. So he names such a turnover, such a transfer of leadership from conscious to unconscious factors, and enantiodromia, a quote unquote running the other way, which is a term borrowed from Heraclitus, who taught that everything in time turns into its opposite. Out of life, said Heraclitus, comes death, and out of death, life. Out of the young, the old, and out of the old, the young. Out of waking, sleep, and out of sleep, waking. The stream of creation and dissolution never stops. The idea is fundamental to Jung psychology and applies furthermore to all pairs of opposites, interchanges not only of the four functions, but also of those two contrary dispositions of psychic energy that Jung has termed extroversion and introversion. Okay, so it's remarkable. So I'm sure you're starting to see how this is such a deep thing, and really grasping this, understanding this psychological component of human beings will allow you to get along with your opposite. I love being around watery, sensitive, feeling, moody people because I'm very airy and fiery. I'm very intellectual, and I'm very much not in my emotions. So I've had to train myself through various practices and shadow work and meditation camps to make sure that I'm truly in touch with my feelings, so that I'm not repressing anything, so that I'm not out of touch, because I am primarily an intuition, a fiery gut feeling kind of a person. So I need to make sure that I, embrace the opposite in myself and in others. All right. So here's another quote I wanted to read. Okay, from the standpoint of psychotherapy, it would be desirable to think of death as only a transition, as part of a life process whose extent and duration are beyond our knowledge, right? He's talking about being able to have peace in the later years of your life there, understanding that death is simply a transition thing. It's not the cessation of life necessarily. So he says, in spite of the fact that the majority of people do not know why the body needs salt, everyone demands it nonetheless because of an instinctive need. It is the same with the things of the psyche. So what he's saying is, even though you don't need to know why you need salt, your body's going to crave it anyways. You will crave salt. The body will demand it because of an instinctive need. And it's the same with the things of the psyche. The psyche will instinctively demand certain things, whether you understand why you need it or not. By far, the greater portion of mankind have from time immemorial felt the need of believing in a continuance of life. The demands of therapy, therefore, do not lead us into any bypaths, but down the middle of the highway trodden by humanity. For this reason, we are thinking correctly and in harmony with life, even though we do not understand what we think. Do we ever understand what we think? We only understand that kind of thinking, which is a mere equation from which nothing comes out but what we have put in. That is the working of the intellect. But besides that, there is a thinking in primordial images, in symbols which are older than the historical man, which are inborn in him from the earliest times and eternally living, outlasting all generations, still make up the groundwork of the human psyche. It is only possible to live the fullest life when we are in harmony with these symbols. Wisdom is a return to them. It is a question neither of belief nor of knowledge, but of the agreement of our thinking with the primordial images of the unconscious. They are the unthinkable matrices of all our thoughts, no matter what our conscious mind may cogitate. One of these primordial thoughts is the idea of life after death. Science and these primordial images are incommensurables. They are irrational data, a priori conditions of the imagination, which are simply there, and whose purpose and justification science can only investigate a posteriori, meaning after the fact. Much as it investigates a function like that of the thyroid gland. Before the 19th century, the thyroid was regarded as a meaningless organ merely because it was not understood. And it would be equally short-sighted of us today to call the primordial images senseless. For me, these images are something like psychic organs, and I treat them with the very greatest respect. It happens sometimes that I must say to an older patient, your picture of God or your idea of immortality is atrophied. Consequently, your psychic metabolism is out of gear. The ancient Athanasius Pharmacon, the medicine of immortality, is more profound and meaningful than we suppose. All right, and then let me end with this paragraph because it is oh so good. In conclusion, I would like to come back for a moment to the comparison with the sun. The 180 degrees of the arc of life from sunrise to sunset are divisible into 4 parts. The first quarter, lying to the east, is childhood, that state in which we are a problem for others, but are not yet conscious of any problems of our own. Conscious problems fill out the second and third quarters, while in the last, in extreme old age, we descend again into that condition where, regardless of our state of consciousness, we once more become something of a problem for others. Childhood and extreme old age are, of course, utterly different, and yet they have one thing in common: submersion in unconscious psychic happenings. Since the mind of a child grows out of the unconscious, its psychic processes, though not easily accessible, are not as difficult to discern as those of a very old person who is sinking again into the unconscious and who progressively vanishes within it. Childhood and old age are the stages of life without any conscious problems, for which reason I have not taken them into consideration here. So obviously some very powerful ideas. going on here. One last thing here about these 4 types. The intuitive process, fire, he says, is neither one of sense perception, nor of thinking, nor yet of feeling, although language shows a regrettable lack of discrimination in this respect. One person will exclaim, "I can see the whole house burning down already." Another will say, "It is as certain as 2 and 2 make 4 that there will be a disaster if fire breaks out here." A third will say, "I have the feeling that this fire will lead to catastrophe." According to their respective temperaments, the one speaks of his intuition as a distinct seeing, the one who said, "I can see this whole house burning down already." That is, he makes a sense perception of it. The other designates it as thinking. One has only to reflect, and then it is quite clear what the consequences will be. Sure as 2 and 2 make 4, right? The third, under the stress of emotion, calls his intuition a process of feeling. But intuition, as I conceive it, is one of the basic functions of the psyche, namely perception of the possibilities inherent in a situation. Perception of the possibilities inherent in a situation. It is probably due to the insufficient development of language that feeling, sensation, and intuition are confused in German, while sentiment and sensation in French and feeling and sensation in English are absolutely distinct, in contrast to sentiment and feeling, which are sometimes used as auxiliary words for intuition. Recently, however, intuition has begun to be commonly used in English speech. Okay, so it's very interesting to see there. Hopefully you can see now, hopefully you can see it intuitively and as a sense perception, how the one who says, "I can see the whole house burning down already," speaks in it as a distinct seeing. That is, he makes a sense perception of it. So that's why intuition and sensation are directly linked, whereas thinking and feeling are more about judgments. But they're all very, very similar, aren't they? With slight yet definite distinctions. Okay, so I hope that helps to further kind of help you understand this. Again, earth, sensation are people who function from the conscious perception through the sense organs. They're very practical and systematic, the earth signs. And the water signs interpret things at a value level. How does this make me feel? Is this pleasant or unpleasant? Do I want this around? Do I want more of this? Do I want less of this? Do I not want this around? So, as we're going to see, and here's another label for the 2 signs for you to categorize them, for the 2 different groups of elements. Fire and air are the individual elements, whereas earth and water are the personal elements. And understanding these terms is going to be helpful. So individual, you'll notice with fire and air sign people, it's more about building an individuality, their life experiences. Fire and air are volatile. They're more able to take things less personally and kind of just go through life being like, well, this is happening, and just be able to process experience without fully attaching onto it at times. And that that can be good or bad. Earth and water, they tend to pick stuff up. They have a harder time not accumulating certain tensions or things through life experience. And I believe it's because they take things so personally. And this has been my experience, and you may have noticed this, that that water and earth signs tend to take things very personally. They're very personal. If you listen to the way they talk, it has to do with a lot of their personal experience, their feelings, the way they're emotionally processing things, their perspectives, and it's very grounded. This is why a lot of earth and water people have very solid identities. They can be pretty grounded in themselves, but it's because it's all coming to this place of gravity of the personal self, very personal. Whereas air and fire signs, they have the capacity, at least, to not take things so personally. And so it's interesting to watch when it comes into human behavior. Okay, again, we have 4 bodies. The physical body, which contains all the sensations, right? It's similar to Earth, the most dense layer of vibration frequency. The astral body, which bears all your instincts, passions, and drives, it contains those emotions. You could relate that to water. And it's very connected to Mars there, of course, through the passions and drives. And Mars is a ruler of a water sign and exalted in an earth sign. Scorpio rules Scorpio, exalted in Capricorn. It does also rule Aries, the fire sign. The mental body, which contains your knowledge and your ideas and the things that you've thought and things that you continually think, that determines the health of your mental body, which relates to air. And then the spiritual body, there's many other words for this, but the spiritual body is the body of the fire, which contains your self-awareness and wisdom. Okay, important to know. 7 directions. We do live in a universe, a septenary universe, a universe of sevens. There are 7 colors, 7 notes on the, I don't think you would call that the chromatic scale, but there's 7 notes in a major scale, in a musical scale. And then there's northeast, southwest, above, below, and within, the 7 directions. And these correspond to the 4 elements and the 3 modes that the energy can take: cardinal, fixed, mutable, the qualities, right? So let's dive into fire. Let's understand fire a little more. And I think by understanding each element, we will be able to grasp the signs a little better. So fire represents our ability to move bravely out into the world according to the spontaneous impulses of our desire and self-will. There's a thing inside of all fire sign people. And if you have any planets in fire signs, there's a thing in us that will almost take over at times, where we have a deep need to experience and demonstrate our free will. So you'll see fire signs have this impulsiveness, almost like we're driven by something other than ourselves. We're driven by a spirit to see that we truly have free will in this life, whether it's saying a joke that's completely out of pocket, or saying something or doing something weird or quirky or spontaneous or unexpected, because we kind of live off that feeling of like life is not a fixed, stuck pattern. Life is what you make it. And so the fire signs really need to feel that. So fire's motivation is to realize its identity. Any fire sign that doesn't have at least a little bit of excitement or a way of channeling or creatively exposing that free will in their lives, of making change, of living spontaneously in some kind of a way, they may suffer after a while. The skillful traits of fire signs are that they are energetic, creative, aspiring, spontaneous, passionate, daring, individualistic, self-confident, enthusiastic, spirited, optimistic. You'll see all these key traits in my astrology course. You'll see all these keywords for each of the signs. I've just kind of clumped some of them together here, taken from from these different fire signs, so you can see what they are generally. The unskillful traits of fire signs are that they're going to be hot-headed, rash, impulsive, uncontrollable, maybe a little obnoxious at times, possibly violent, domineering, insensitive, foolhardy, destructive, overzealous, fanatical, unrealistic, pushy, excitable, or that they burn out. And, these often have their source in unmet psychological needs, as a desperate way of the soul to reclaim its freedom once again. And that tends to be the problem with a lot of people. They just can't see what they're doing. And it's a desperate attempt at catharsis, which would be a release of certain emotions that have become repressed or stuck. So, all people who are suffering, they do things that we consider evil because they're suffering. If we could understand that, we would live in forgiveness and we would always have peace as far as our personal lives go. So I think that's an important aspect to know, that whenever we see unskillful traits, especially as we are learning this through astrology, to understand why they arise. Obviously, somebody who's fulfilled and happy and has love from within, they're not going to do as many bad things, because when you're happy, when you're in a good place, you don't decide, hey, I'm going to go make a mess of my life. Hey, I'm going to go hurt some people. When you really understand the nature of evil, again, that's that reconciliation of opposites, which is very helpful to do as we move through this, world of duality. So we've got the fire signs. It also helps to understand kind of the archetypes, behind the signs here, these three signs. You can understand not only holistically the whole entire element, but you can also get a grasp of what these signs are, what they're doing here. So Aries is the pioneer. That's but one archetype from Aries that we can take that it represents. Leo is the performer, and Sagittarius is the philosopher. And so with all these archetypes, we have an expansion of consciousness, a outrushing, a trying of new things, and a shining. It's about, like, even philosophy is about shining a light into the dark places of thought, of the world, of being able to conceptualize and understand what's taking place here by shining a light of understanding. Philosophy, Sophia, means wisdom. Sophia is the goddess of wisdom. So philosophy is a word that means the search for wisdom or something similar to that. So the fire signs are here to shine a light, to spread awareness, and to reveal and express the spirit working within and animating life. Next, we come to the earth signs. And here with the earth signs, we have Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And earth represents our ability to create organization, structure, and systems of efficiency. Okay, earth's motivation is to provide material substance. So it's thanks to the earth signs that we have solidity at all, that we have anything that lasts. It's thanks to the earth signs. Their skillful traits are being practical, realistic, useful, dependable, deliberate, cautious, grounded, stable, solid, sensuous, very in their bodies, stable, substantial, patient, enduring, persistent, resolute, and productive. And we really wouldn't get anything done if we didn't have any earth signs. However, their unskillful traits are that they can be stubborn, rigid, just holding firm to things that they don't need to hold on to, because tradition or stability, even when it becomes rigidity, is sometimes better for them than the lack of security of jumping to a new idea or to an unproven method or a new state. So they're very much different from fire signs, pretty much almost as different as night and day, but in a less complementary sort of a sense. I mean, they do complement each other, but they're just so different, especially when we see how fire signs are here to pioneer. The earth signs are here to conserve, which are two very counter, they're very opposite in that sense. Stubborn, rigid, materialistic, possessive, obstinate, overly conservative, and flexible. Also can be, some greediness with this, because earth signs do really value materiality. Unbending, stuck, lethargic, dense, acquisitive, unyielding, or security oriented, which is not always a bad thing, but it is when it's an overemphasis, because in all honesty, there is no security in this life. All of life is leading towards death. So earth signs really do need to incorporate perspective, which is of the air, high hopes, and a good high spirit, which is of the fire. And then, of course, the water to stay pliable, to stay moist and soft and fertile. So all the elements need each other, of course. The earth signs are Taurus, which is the archetype of the owner, also the gardener, Virgo is the analyst archetype. There's a lot of archetypes for each of the signs. Virgo could also be the scientist or the experimenter. Aquarius would be the scientist also, but yeah, Virgo is the analyst, the analyzer, and Capricorn's the builder or the CEO or the executive. Earth signs are here to provide the stable foundations upon which we can build the long-term perpetual work of the soul. And then when we come to air, we are dealing with the most ethereal of the elements. If you think of air, this is the only element you can pass through and not really feel. I can feel the wind as I move my hand quickly through it, but we just pass straight through air. It's the most unsolid of all the elements. So if you contemplate this will help teach you about air sign people. Air represents our ability to objectively analyze life from above, to achieve perspective, and to explore and communicate ideas. Sound travels through the airwaves. So it's through the air that we can actually communicate, and that I can hear your words and you can hear my words. So air is all about sharing and communicating from my mind to your mind, from my mouth to your ear. The skillful traits are that they're very rational. Oh, air's motivation, by the way, is to make social and intellectual connections. So their skillful traits are being rational, abstract, logical, theoretical, mental, social, friendly, communicative, objective, impersonal, impartial, observant, very clever, very witty, versatile, and inquisitive. But where they are unskillful is that they can be spacey, ungrounded, just detached, wordy, gossiping, meddlesome, aloof, distant, unfeeling, inconsistent, flighty, nervous, indecisive, superficial, insubstantial, removed, or over intellectual. And so as you can see, a water sign person would probably have some trouble with an air sign person, as would a earth sign person. But you know who would get along with air is fire, because fire would heat up the air, and also fire signs don't have as much of a need for security. So when an air sign starts getting a little detached or unfeeling, a little removed, a fire sign is going to be more than likely, from any other element, going to likely be okay with that and be like, you're getting detached, but it's all right because I'm fire. I don't really need security. I can just keep burning and shining. And your inconsistency can actually not be such a frustration to me as it would to an earth sign, because a fire sign can actually deal with some spontaneity. So that's why air and fire are polarities. If you look at your notes in the zodiac, a fire sign is always opposite an air sign, and vice versa. So fire and air really go together. Fire can heat up the air, which allows the air to lift, and air can fan the flames of fire. And you'll notice this in your interactions with others. Including if you're an earth sign, when you're around water sign, you'll see how water people juice you up and empower you, or make you more creative, just like how water infuses into the earth. Also, earth will give water sign people some grounding and stability and some containment, where then water can start to do its thing. So water and earth go together, air and fire go together. And then when you cross them, like for example, water and fire, that creates steam. So you can have a very exciting, steamy relationship between a fire sign and a water sign. So yeah, you can have all kinds of combinations. And the air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So Gemini is the messenger, the one with the message, it's the communicator, the one here to communicate, teach, and explore ideas. Libra is the mediator. This is the politician, or the diplomat, the one who is here to find a balance, find harmony, find good cooperation socially by being able to mediate ideas. Communication is a key theme here, but whereas Gemini is just about connection, let me understand. Libra is like, let's get along. Let's understand for the purpose of getting along and creating harmony. You'll notice when it comes to mental health, harmony is a very important thing. The more disharmonious your thoughts are, the more resentful, the more judgmental, the more disharmonious your thoughts are, you will become sick. The mind has a very important need for harmony, and that is indicated through Libra, which is ruled by Venus, which Saturn is exalted in. So discipline will exalt the mind. The mind is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant. And if you make your mind serve you, if you train your mind with discipline, with that exalted Saturn, use discipline to control the mind, to guide the mind, to make the mind, put a leash on the mind and keep that leash short, because otherwise the mind is a crazy thing and it will drive you nuts. And then keep it trained on harmony, on positivity, on beauty, on good thoughts, on noble thoughts, on thoughts that are good for people. Like if people could hear your thoughts, what would you begin thinking? If people could hear everything you're thinking, you'd want to think compliments. You'd want to think good things. You want to think in high hopes. You'd want to think in good faith, especially for others. So that social element, the way you think of others, is going to be the way you think of yourself, and vice versa. The way you think of yourself and what you do to yourself mentally is likely what you will also do to others in your relationships. So we always want to really watch that, and watch the way people talk about themselves too. The way that they, unless joking is one thing, that's separate. But when people um, judge themselves very harshly, it's very likely they'll do that to you too, eventually at some point, because the mind is this closed system. It's this thing that you live in. And the way you think about self is going to be the way you think about others. And the way you think about others will be the way you think about yourself. So then we have Aquarius, which is the revolutionary. This is that part of the air which wants to switch things up. Okay, so now how can we think of this different? How can we do this different? How can we work things out differently? So yeah, Aquarius is that fixed air. It's that concentration which is required for you to begin to have a new idea or a new mode of understanding. Air signs are here to create the open space of freedom so that we may explore, share, breathe, and understand ourselves and our relationship to the world and to each other. And then we have water. Water represents our ability to connect deeply with one another, express emotion, and to sensitively feel our connection to life. It's about really feeling connected. Water's motivation is to perceive emotional and soul meaning. If we didn't have water signs, we would have nothing that would really stick. The word memory even has the word mem, which is an ancient word for water. And science has shown now that water carries memory. Water carries the memory of the shapes of the pipes that it had to travel through before it reached your glass. Water carries the memory of what is spoken to it, of the creeks that it moved through. Water carries memory. And so when we deal with the soul, we're dealing with the water element. The soul is very in tune with the water because the astral realm, which is the realm just outside this physical realm, is where all the impressions are left, the emotional impressions. And it makes an imprint on the soul. That's why when we talk about soulful music, music carries the soul, because the soul is that personal self. It's the moon. It's that personal part of you, which carries the memory of who you are and who you've been. And it expresses emotion. And that's why we need to clear out our emotions and find a catharsis and express things and go out and stomp and go in the car and roll up the windows and scream, because you got to get energy through the body. If you want emotions to move, you have to move the body. And the voice is the carrier of a lot of the vibrations that will help, remove emotions or help them process. So if we don't do that, the soul can get very sick within us. And because the soul is of this water, and that water carries the memory, the soul carries the memory of things. And that's why forgiveness will help set you free. It'll help clear out the soul and heal the soul too through forgiveness. But water, if we lived in this universe without water, we would have none of that intimacy, none of that emotional connection, nothing that really stuck with us, where it was like, wow, that was a good movie. It made me feel something. And you remember it because it made you feel. So memory is tied to feeling, and it's all tied to this mem, this water. Water's motivation is to perceive emotional and soul meaning, what a thing meant to our soul. The skillful traits, I'll say a few of these. It's being reflective, caring, nurturing, transparent, feeling, providing, shielding, sensitive, empathetic, compassionate, healing, and bonding. And even being impressionable, being able to be moldable by the environment. That can be a skill of water. Unifying, merging, flowing, receptive. And then of course the bad traits of that would be being indrawn, secretive, deceptive, too impressionable to the environment, not being able to stand in themselves and be able to put their own vibe out into the world, but being helpless and receptive of the vibes of others or the environment. Even untruthful. Water can mask, it can distort. So water sign people need to make sure that they are being transparent. And oftentimes this only comes once they find peace, because once the soul of a water sign person has found peace, then the water becomes still. And when the water is still, you automatically have transparency. But when the water is chaotic and there's no peace, it's all distorted. And then it's even hard for the water sign person to know what's going on. And it's not, sometimes they're not even trying to lie or not tell the truth. It's just their perceptions are distorted. Uh, I feel bad for water sign people sometimes. They seem to have it the hardest. I'll be honest, in my experience. They have some very, very tough lessons. If we look at Cancer, it's the sign of the mother. They have a lot of attachment issues or mommy issues, which run very, very deep because the mother is the one who we are physically connected to in order to grow into this world, literally connected through our belly button to her. It's crazy. Scorpio is a sign of sex and death and rebirth. Scorpios suffer more than any zodiac sign in my experience. And I know a 7-planet Scorpio, somebody with 7 planets in Scorpio, and her life has been an absolute mess, but she's transformed and she's revived herself and she's come out of it much stronger, much more grounded. So the transformation of Scorpio is so amazing that they can go through. And then just think about Pisces, the last sign, the one here to transmute all the energies, to help us all reset into a new cycle in Aries. So the water signs are very deep. If you want to talk about depth, the water always goes to the lowest level. All right, so the water signs. Cancer is cardinal. Cancer is the nurturer. As cardinal, they take action. Albeit maybe it is from a little sideways, a little indirect action, being the crab. But still, the crab rushes out and takes that action. As a cardinal sign, that's what Cancer is about. Nurturing. Nurturing is an active process. In order to truly nurture, you have to be active. You have to actively listen, and then you have to take action. Scorpio is the detective. Fixed water. Fixed is not so much about action. It's more about concentration. And so they concentrate. They watch. They're very intent and intense. And then Pisces is the healer, the one who takes energies and flips them and transmutes them and transforms them, works with them, blends with them. Pisces is a healer. Water signs are here to provide the glue and depth which makes things stick, whether through memory, intimacy, or meaning, and to refresh, hydrate, and soothe the soul. Water is very healing. So I'm sure you guys know by now, the circle of the zodiac represents your whole body. And we still have to, well, I'll do in the next class on the parts of the body and how each sign rules them. And we'll explore through the symbolism how deep of a study that is. We'll understand the signs even more by really understanding the body part and the function of that part. And it will reveal the psychology and the personality of each of the signs. For example, Aries are very heady, very headstrong, because Aries rules the head. So that falls into perfect alignment to help describe the signs. Okay, each segment or sign corresponds to a particular mode of consciousness or energy. For example, cardinal fire, fixed water. It's a very particular type, and it can be understood through the symbolism of that sign, as well as the symbolism of the body, and through the sign's relationship to other signs. And each sign rules a part of the body and relates to the function of that part. And 12 has since ancient times been used as a natural number to divide the psyche. And of course, there's 12 cranial nerves. I'm sure that's related. Each sign has a spiritual significance. Also, there are 12 cell salts, 12 different kinds of cell salts, each of which pertain to our particular zodiac sign. You can look at what those are, and you can actually order those cell salts online. And they say that the ones that you want are the 3 signs that you were not in the mother's womb for. So we're in the mother's womb for approximately 9 months. That leaves 3 months out. And they say that the human evolution will be complete once we're in the womb for the full 12 months. Right now, we're incomplete, and that's reflected through our gestation cycle within the mother. So you want to take the 3 cell salts of the first one being your sun sign, the next one being the sign after that, and then the sign after that. So for me, it's Leo, because I'm a Leo. I need the Leo cell salt, the Virgo cell salt, and then the Libra cell salt to make up for where I'm deficient because of the nutrients I didn't get fully in the womb. That's the theory, at least. I do have those cell salts. I did buy them, and I do take them from time to time. And yeah, I mean, I'm just a healthy guy, though. I haven't noticed a difference really because I'm just so healthy already. But each sign has a spiritual significance for the one who wants to dominate his or her needs and desires, who wants to be above their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions, be able to work with these things rather than be dominated by them. For the one who wants to synthesize the apparently contradictory modes of energy. For example, air, air and take your pick, air and earth, or air and water, or fire and water. They seem to be very opposite or contradictory, but they're actually, and we see through the zodiac, they're geometrically opposed, which means they're complementary. They're actually complementary and unified in this one life. So astrology is a system of philosophy and understanding of the psyche, which will really, I think maybe more than pretty much anything on earth, help you come into harmony, not only with your whole self, but with the whole body of all the selves in the universe, because we're all cells in a bigger body in the macrocosm. So this is what we'll look at next class. We'll go over the body parts and we'll go more into depth about why each sign rules these body parts. This is so fun, such a fun realm of discovery. So I can't wait to do that with you. I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I will see you very soon. Be blessed. Reach out to me if you want a reading. Be sure to follow all the socials so you can see the daily videos that I put out. And I love you very much. Be blessed. We'll talk soon. Peace.